Hi, everybody. Welcome to GW Center for Integrative Medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Kogan. Taking the little break, I'm gonna make this video from vacation. I think part of it why I decided to do this is it's a pretty important topic. It's a topic of Alzheimer's, or rather prevention of Alzheimer's disease. And also it's a fascinating principle. We've been discussing that one of the largest or one of the biggest challenges of Alzheimer's disease is figuring out when do you need to start addressing it or when do you need to start treating. You may have heard me and a lot of other experts say that probably prevention is, well, not probably, prevention is much more beneficial, much more effective, rather than once you waited until Alzheimer's developed. Treating it is much harder. So this is, I'm going to share my screen as usual and show you that this is a study from New England Journal of Medicine just a couple of months ago. Now, it is made from China. It's a Chinese study. They took biomarkers. They took a typical, what we called an amyloid biomarkers, and assessed them for a very long time, for 20 years, in hundreds of patients. Well, why is this such an important study? We do know now that amyloid markers can be easily assessed in the blood. Now, this study was done in CSF. This study was conducted some years ago. Of course, it takes a long time to collect data for 20 years. We did not have any blood biomarkers for Alzheimer's 20 years ago. We've only started having them in the last few years. But the CSF markers, so these are markers in the spinal fluid, have been around for a very long time. What's really important is that it's the same markers. So this are the markers, the amyloid beta marker, and also something called neurofilament light chains. This is the exact same markers we now obtain in the blood, both 181, p-tau 181, and the neurofilaments. The test is called ATM through the LabCorp. Now, it is important to know we have a better test now, which is PA217, which is a newer test and seems to be performing better. So combination of all those two tests, in my expectation, is going to be just as sensitive and just as predictive as what they used in CSF. So what did this researcher found? Well, basically, very simple result. Patients, they could have predicted for 20 years, they were able to predict who is going to get to the Alzheimer's. So they took patients, followed them, assessed them CSF regularly, and said, look, the patients who in the beginning we saw higher numbers of the amyloid markers in the spinal fluid end up having the Alzheimer's disease. So why is this such an important topic? If I told you that you may be at the higher risk for Alzheimer's 20 years ago, now we have a methods that pretty much eliminates entire risk of Alzheimer's down to zero. At this point, we have close to 100 patients in our clinic followed for about anywhere between 5 to 7 years. None of them developed Alzheimer's disease. I believe that we're seeing the same result in other clinics. If you engage in a very aggressive lifestyle, certain types of supplementation, removal of the risk while you're getting to develop the amyloid in the first place, which is a whole separate video, but those of you who have followed our work with Dale Bredesen's protocol, what's called PreCODE, reversal of cognitive decline, and PreCODE, prevention of cognitive decline, have already seen our data. And while it's much harder to reverse patients with existing cognitive decline, prevention seems to be a lot dramatically easier, I would say, since none of the patients progressed. And I would have expected by now, if we had a control. Of course, in regular practice, we don't do studies, so we don't have a control. But somewhere between probably 5 to 10% of patients should have progressed within about maybe 5 to 10 years, and none of them have. So we know that process is effective, but what's critical is to start getting tested early. I think it's a fallacy to sort of say, oh, forget it, let's just wait and then assess. I think the entire field of cognitive assessment is going through transformation. I think we're going to see these tests, especially now that they're available in the blood and direct to consumers, even by some labs. We're going to see a rapid change. We're going to see patients who have ApoE4 risk getting tested early, getting potentially tested in their 20s and then following the marker forward. And the moment it starts shifting upwards, you modify your protocol of prevention, you get more aggressive about it. You may need to look into a new driver. For example, sleep apnea is a huge driver for cognitive decline. So you may never had it, but midlife in the 20s, you were fine. But in mid-20s, you may start looking into it and realizing you have it. So very interesting study. I'll put the full link in the, of course, in the description. I would mention that it's a top study. That's why I ended up in the New England Journal of Medicine. They didn't just look at the sort of random assessment of cognition, right? It wasn't just, markers in the spinal fluid and then also just some tests, cognitive tests. No, they actually looked at the brain volumes, which is the new standard. So they looked at the hippocampal volumes and it was significantly shrinking and correlating with the rising amyloid in the spinal fluid. So this is all true. This is all real. We're going to have more of this data. I'm sure somebody's going to repeat this in the States. I'm sure we're going to see the same result. If you're at risk, you should start pushing to get this test early. You should start getting pushed to get these tests now. Whether you're in 20s or 30s or 40s or 50 makes no difference to me. I think the best time to start prevention program probably in the 20s or 30s, just after you finish puberty. And if you do carry the ApoE4 gene, or even if you simply have other types of Alzheimer's risk, you should start getting on the program. Particularly in the beginning, it should be 100% lifestyle program very, very early on, simply because it's going to be most effective. It's going to make you feel better too. So this is an important point. People often confuse preventive lifestyle protocols with actual treatments, right? When we're doing the prevention, chances are getting on a high plant-based Mediterranean style, or maybe slightly towards ketosis kind of style of eating, pretty good exercise routine, meditative and brain-enhancing practices, such as, whether it's a computerized gaming that you like to play to improve your cognition, or even developing new skills like learning a new language or a new dance. All of those things are going to build up your protective mechanisms, again, developing Alzheimer's lately. And chances are, as I mentioned, they're probably going to make you feel better in many other ways. You may just simply develop sharper cognition, your body may feel better, you have more energy, you may be sleeping better. So all those are going to be side benefits instead of side effects of the therapies you're going to have to use if you wait until you start getting the cognitive decline. Hopefully this was helpful. Links are in descriptions of the video. I'll make sure I also add description to the RECODE and PreCODE program there. See you soon. Stay sharp, friends. Stay cognitively optimized. And again, if you're at risk, please consider this new data as something quite potentially important for you. Take care.